I'm trying to do a series where my deficiencies in art or things that I want to strengthen in terms of knowledge, I watch tutorial videos and I take notes and I try to do the studies in them so that I can improve in like art in general. So that's like what I'm doing like here with David Finch. He has a few tutorial videos, not a lot, decent amount, I think about 30 of them. So I'm just going to watch them, and I'm also going to like practice. I'm going to do that live, and whatever I learn, I'll just stack this knowledge up and like try to do videos on them to talk about what I've learned. Because that is the best way to learn. You not only copy, you also have to be able to teach. You have to be teachable and you have to be a willing teacher as well. So, and that's how I've been improving as an artist. So that's what I'm going to be doing here today. How to get started learning how to draw comics. So that's the video we're starting with today, and let's get into it.
That you want to learn how to draw comics, but it's incredibly daunting, and you can waste countless hours skipping around and running into roadblocks that really aren't necessary if you take a slow, structured approach. So in order to start, we're going to ignore a lot of things. We're not going to worry about perspective or storytelling or panel layout or even lighting at this point. What we're going to do is just focus on the initial steps that you need to start. You're sitting down and you want to start drawing. And so what I recommend is that you get yourself a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema. It really covers the entire business from start to finish in not great detail, but it's all foundational. It has all the information you need to get started. But we want to start putting our pencil to paper. And so what's the first thing that we need to do? What we need to do first is learn how to draw a gestural figure. And we could worry about proportions, but we need to just be able to quickly establish a figure that we can start to move around in space and start to play with. Without this, we really have nowhere to go. And this really...
Alright, so we're starting with gestural figures apparently. Gestural figures. Let's see what he's got.
Is the most important, fundamental, foundational step that you can take in your drawing. And I'm kind of looking at a drawing by John Buscema in the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book. And you're going to find when you do this yourself, if you haven't done these at all or not much, they're going to be a little bit difficult and they're going to be a little stiff, but that's all right because it gets much more natural and flowing as you go along. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about what all this is. I've got videos that really cover how to do gestural drawing well, and it goes really kind of in depth, and so we're not going to do that here. What I want to do is really just show you a way to kind of get started. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw this figure. This is straight from the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book. I'm not being 100% accurate with it probably, but it's really not the point right now. The point is to just get started drawing figures. I don't want to worry about any kind of detail, any kind of anatomy. What I want to do is just start putting a figure on the page. And so there's one. This isn't anywhere near as effective as John Buscema's figure. It's much better, but the more you do these, the better you'll get at it. And I've been doing these for years, so you'd think I'd be a little bit better at this. But there you go. There's my attempt at John Buscema's figure here. And what you need to do from here is spend the first couple hours, I'm going to say 2 hours of your first day just doing these. And so let's go ahead and just do one more quickly. Here's another figure from his book.
Oh, you know what? Let me look at this stuff, yeah? I think I have the digital copy of the book. So I'm just going to find that. Alright, I think I'll put them side by side so that I can check them out as I'm walking.
And I really recommend copying these figures specifically because he does it really, really well. These are a really great starting point for drawing figures. And if you go right into figure drawing from life, if that's the way you choose to go, or you look at other comics, none of these figures are broken down in this way. They're all drawn with a lot of detail, and that can be very, very confusing when you're trying to just learn how to put a figure together. So I really recommend you play with these figures before you move on and try to draw from other comics or from life. This takes away everything but what you essentially need to know at
I'm doing well, Kaji. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm doing good.
Stage. And so now after I've drawn a whole whack of these, the next stage that I need to worry about, and let's call this hour 3 of day 1, use proportion. Instead of having to draw these diagrams and do all this stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, my head is just about that big, I'm going to do this all by eye. So my neck is going to be a half a head tall right there, and then my chest down to the bottom of the chest should be about the same height as the head, and I think that's about right. And then we've got another division about a head height here, which is just about the waist. We've got another one.
These are the proportions I believe that he's talking about on how to divide the head. I also talked about this stuff when I was looking at Batsia's drawing boots and bibs. I did a stream like I think about 2 weeks ago or so where I talked about this stuff, and it was really helpful. I can't lie, it's really helpful. It just helps with like proportions But the thing I've learned from like watching David Finch's video, because it's something always going to try and point out as often as possible, is that usually one thing that can help with like drawing figures, rather than like just trying to memorize, or like, because when you're drawing dynamic figures, a lot of the time you can't necessarily use this 8 or 9 headed technique to actually get the proportions. So one of the things that he talked about was that you could just draw the body first, and then you draw the head on top of the body, and then like it's a bit like easier for you to sort of like draw that figure and make that figure look proportional and not look like that like there's something off with the anatomy. I'm going to say, right, like, because when he did start the video, he talked about like actually getting the book for yourself, because one of the best ways to learn with these things is to actually like look at the reference materials, because a lot of these artists, what they do is that they just break it down into like a simplified, will I call it diluted information, condensed information for you, so that it can be easier for you to digest a lot of the time. But most of the time that can be helpful, but once you've digested that, you might need more, you might need to explore a little bit more. So usually it's good to kind of like have the book by your side. And one thing I liked about this book, because I personally have never had access to this book like when I was younger, and when I was actually starting to actually walk and draw figures, like, and understand structure and things like that, and like how to use like these mannequins to draw, like this ones over here. I don't know if you can see them, these mannequins over here, this type of mannequins, to actually get figures down. I wasn't able to properly like do it, and the way that I was able to do it was that I got a book called like what do they call it, fantasy cartooning, by Ben Cladwell, I think. And in the book, what they used was a lot of like these simple shapes and these simple mannequins to be able to break down like complex poses like this, like all these superhero poses, and how to get like proper foreshortening and things like that. And that was how I personally learned. I didn't necessarily learn with like the proper structure of like full shapes like boxes and things like that. I learned with like mostly structures like this, and that was how I learned, and that's how I break down poses. Especially when I find them like extreme and difficult.
And you should be able to do this with all of your figures, and you can see how quickly and easily I was able to get those divisions without having to do this diagram and do all this nonsense. Do this with all of your figures. You've got a bunch of them on the page, hopefully. It gets tougher when they're in more unusual or seated positions, but really, I wouldn't worry about that right now. What you want to do is just make sure, in general, your figures are proportional. Another thing to bear in mind, I'm going to lower my arm here. My elbow should be right about at this line here, and my hand should be just below the crotch. And so that really kind of gives you all the measurements that you need to get started drawing these kinds of figures. And by now, after having done all this, drawn all these figures and measured them out, you should be a good 3 or 4 hours into your first day. If you're young and have no responsibilities, you can do this all day and you have all the time in the world. If you don't, what you want to do is really use your time strategically as possible. So you might have to take this first step and use just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days. That was the book. And
I think that's bad.
The next step from here, and this could be later in the same day after you grab some coffee and some lunch, or it could be the next day. It really depends on just how quickly you want to try and internalize all this, but you do need to bear in mind that there is only so much that you can take in one day. Your figures are probably going to look stiff, and that's slowly something that will get better as you go along. And so for the first 2 days at least, and I really recommend that you should do more like 3, this is all you should be doing. Don't worry about anything else. There's just so much to take in, and you will burn yourself out. You want to just focus on getting this stage down. It's the most important stage in drawing comics, or really any kind of illustration where you're having to create figures. Everything else branches from this. So here we are, it's day 3 already, and we have our simple figures kind of worked in, and we're going to start with that.
So what he's talking about is these figures over here. So they're about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3. I think 3 figures in total. There's about 3 figures in total, and there's just like an oversimplification of the figures over here. So I would suggest to anyone that is starting out, because I don't think he really talked about this in the video, and that is why he gave the recommendation of actually getting the book yourself. I would suggest you actually look at these figures that are around here, like all this simple mannequin looking figures that are around, um, like this parts of the book, and actually study them and try to replicate them, because that's how you're going to get good at like figure drawing itself, right? Because then you'll be able to not worry so much about detail whenever you're breaking down like a pose, things like that. So like this tall illustration, this is a very nice pose, nice tall illustration. You can see how they broke it down, and he didn't talk about that necessarily in the video, but that's why I said, like if you're actually studying this book, it's going to take a while. But look at how they broke it down from like a simple shape like this, and then they added more complex forms, and then they added more details like the costume, like the Spider-Man costume and things like that. They did it for the Iron Man, for Thor, and like this they did some like more poses like this. So I think it's very important and essential that you do that. So like, like I always say, tutorial videos are nice to watch and stuff like that, but the most important thing is the action that you take. You won't get good by watching like all these tutorial videos and not taking action. If you watch a tutorial video, you actually have to take action, as much action as possible. So I think that's all right. I think that's good. Let's do another one. And that's what like Art God actually said yesterday, well, when he was on the stream, that most of David Finch's tutorials are not like really for like pure beginners, because he's so ahead of a lot of like artists. He doesn't necessarily do like the really basic stuff most of the time. There are videos that he does it, but not all the time. You can see that curve in the spine, very nice. And the thing about doing these studies is that when you've done a lot of them, it's not going to be difficult for you to break down poses. Look at that. And I think my head is going to be really good as well because of how I applied this. I'll probably take my time one day and just properly study this, because I've never like truly given this book the attention it deserves. I'm someone that's doing comic, and I haven't properly learned how to. I've not like properly settled down like even once and like to properly study this book, and that's not good enough.
So for the first 2 days at least, and I really recommend that you should do more like 3, this is all you should be doing. Don't worry about anything else. There's just so much to take in, and you will burn yourself out. You want to just focus on getting this stage down. It's the most important stage in drawing comics, or really any kind of illustration where you're having to create figures. Everything else branches from this. So here we are, it's day 3 already, and we have our simple figures kind of worked in, and we're going to start with that today, because everything that we do is based on this, and this is why it was so important to really just focus on this for the first couple of days. I'm just going to get this drawn in. You'll find that these shapes get easier and easier for you to create on your own as you go. And so there's my basic figure. I've got everything I need to get started. But what I want to do now is start to establish anatomy. You think, but wait, I don't know any anatomy. I'm really not ready to do that. And you have 2 options. You can either start pouring through anatomy books and get it all into detail with all of these no skin anatomical drawings that can really widely vary from each other, from drawing to drawing. It can be a real hassle. What I really recommend you do is go with the Bart Sears technique. I'm looking at a Bart Sears drawing right now. Bart Sears' anatomy is very, very good, and it's very clear. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my chest. That's going to be just about a head high right here. And I'm looking at...
There's no wrong about that. What I personally did was that I looked at Anatomy for Sculptors, and that's the book I personally would recommend. Like if you're starting out in anatomy and you're actually willing to like, you're in it for the long game, and like art is not like sort of like a fun hobby for you. You actually want to become professional in this, become like a professional artist that draws figures and things like that. I actually believe Anatomy for Sculptors is actually one of the best materials out there that you could use. And you can also check out some of the Morpho book series. I've actually not settled down to study those books. What I've studied is Anatomy for Sculptors, and that has really helped me, like with my anatomy, or at least understanding the parts of the human body and how to interpret them as simple shapes, because it just goes into really good detail. And just the figures alone, like whenever I see those figures, I actually want to draw them. So I don't know, you might be someone that might be turned off by, like, those figures, but I personally, whenever I see those like anatomical figures in the anatomy for sculptors book, I actually want to draw them. I actually want to draw the shapes, and I actually want to draw like the 3D models that they have there. So, and you actually have to be willing to want to learn. Like, the reason why I suck at perspective is because one of the reasons is that, like, I haven't been willing and I haven't been thirsty for knowledge on perspective. It's something I've been running away from, but I am 100% sure I'll get good at it, because I just know, I just know. So I just won't stop. I just won't stop. As long as I keep wanting to learn, I'm definitely going to improve and get better. So, you should have that kind of attitude. You should be a bit, obsessive about it. So this is a really good figure, by the way. I don't know if you guys can see that, but this is a really good figure. This is from a Batsia's book. All right, let me see.
Garciers in drawing.
That's a nice figure. That's a really nice figure. I think, let me copy it. Let me see what's up. Oh yeah, I know the issue.
Right now. Now, he gets much more into detail with it in his own work, and it's absolutely beautiful, but in its basic level, I think it's really the greatest way to start getting comfortable with anatomy and using it on a figure. So my deltoid is a 3 muscle bit, and I'm just going to draw that in just like that. It connects into my chest, just like this, and you can see it in his drawings. He does it so accurately. You can really start to get a sense of it, just like this. And after this stage, you can start to go into much more detail about how all of this works, really get a great understanding. But what we want right now is just to be able to throw some anatomy on a figure and make it work well. I've got my rib cage here, and that's an important landmark because so much is going to attach to it. My stomach is going to come down through here, just like this, nice and simple. I've got just some simple shapes drawn in here. I'm not worried about giving them a nice shape and making them really beautiful to look at. I'm just getting all of my basic anatomical shapes blocked in, just with simple balls and connecting essentially footballs. Something I learned from Jim Lee. There's another shape here connecting in. I've got my pelvis here. As a comic artist, I highly recommend you don't go into a great deal of detail in that area because it can start to be very distracting. So we keep it very simple. So on my leg, I've got this connecting shape. I've got my central one here. I've got a long tendon kind of a muscle here. I've got this muscle here, and you see I'm just connecting these kind of football shapes. You'll need to learn where these go, but this is how you do it. There's really no shortcut to this.
Batsias actually calls them bubbles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Batsias calls them bubbles. He has this like bubble shape that he usually does for like all the muscles he draws. And if you check out his book, you're going to see a lot of that, especially when he was breaking down male figures. He used a lot of like bubble-like shapes to break them down.
For finding somebody that does it like Bart's years in a really, really simple, easy way to understand. Here's my knee here, I've got this part here, another part here. Again, I'm going with just really simple shapes to describe these. Let's do the other leg. I've got this shape here. We're looking at more of the side of the leg, and you can see it. I'm looking at Bart's years' drawing. He shows it very, very well, so that's a real help. That shape there. Connects in like this. I've got a shape here. And I'm making sure all of my muscles essentially connect in, and I'm creating a diagram for myself of all the muscles on the body. Really simply. I don't want to be worried about any kind of flow or anything. I just want everything to connect, and this is an initial stage of your learning. And it's a really simple way to start getting all of your anatomy working on a figure without driving yourself crazy with a lot of needless detail. So it's just
the problem with what he just said is that actually you will drive yourself crazy, especially if you are like drawing figures a lot, because you like the way different artists express different parts of the body. they have their own art style, and because of that they are going to express different parts of the body differently. So some like artists might like, instead of like, they may just have like three abs in total, and like some artists might draw it differently, like the shape, like look at the shape of Batsia's like abs in comparison to the shape of like what's his name, David Finch's abs. And if you compare David Finch's abs to Jim Lee's abs, it's different from Damora's abs, it's different. Like, yeah, what's his name, Jorge Jimenez doesn't even add abs to his own work. So like that is why I actually advocate for actually being a little bit obsessive about like the anatomy, just a little bit, despite how difficult it is. Actually know the anatomy itself. No, you don't need to like be like a medical doctor or like a surgeon, like just, just do a lot of practice and just know the shapes at least, that are there. That's what I would suggest, you know. And the thing about learning is that, like, from what I've understood, is like if you do something enough times, you actually get really good at it. And yeah, that's what I think.
Simple sketched in shapes. I've got a muscle shape here. Another one here. I'm just going to draw this as a simple shape coming out to here, and you can see I really have very little detail there, but I'm not looking for anything that looks great. What I'm looking for is just a really simple anatomy to get me started. My tricep is going to connect here. My bicep is here. There's a central muscle that connects just in like that. I've got this muscle shape here. Another one here. Very simple. I've got all these striations and everything here, but we're going to make it as simple as we can. I'm going to connect down to the hand. There's a bone there. There's all these different details. None of that's really important right now. We just want something that's going to work as simplified anatomy. And so there we go. That's really the next step in your learning.
Yeah, so with all he's said, he said something like, but the one thing I think he didn't mention, which can actually be very helpful, is the fact that if you're looking at all these drawings, you're going to notice something called counterbalance in most of them. You're going to see things like different areas where things peak. So like from here there's a peak, over here there's a peak, and this area is straight over here. This is going to be helpful when you start drawing like characters like in foreshortened angles, and you need to like draw, like let's say a character flying, and you need to draw like the pose, and like show that character, for instance, running, and you need to show like the pose of that character, like maybe you need to draw something like this. It's going to be a lot easier for you whenever you are drawing like those characters like this. So he just didn't mention that, and I feel like that's like sort of important, and that will help you like if in your figure drawing. Yeah, that's what I just think. There's usually counterbalance. I've mentioned this a lot of time, but if you're not there, like even if you look at this pose, like look at this delicious pose that Busima did here. Like look at this leg. Look at the leg over here. Like if you were getting the shape of the leg, let's just say it's whatever. It's this cube over here, and then there's this, and then there's this over here. You can see that this area is straight and this area is curved, right? And this area is straight and this area is curved, and then even among there's just little changes in those areas as well. So curved, straight, right? And then you could even see like different areas that you could just add like peaks and stuff, and that's what actually is going to make your work have beauty. And you actually get to this level and draw this way by doing a lot of gesture drawings and working with a lot of like trying to like simplify things for yourself, like using simple lines and things like that. And that is actually how you get better at this type of stuff. Anyways,
being able to start getting figures working like this, let's make sure to connect this up. And so there we go. What I recommend you do now, my assumption is this should take you quite a bit longer, so you're going to struggle with it, and you'll have to really be looking back and forth at the reference and really get all of these connections, and you'll slowly start to get a feel for it. But the way you really get a feel for it is to start really connecting this stage with the first stage. And so this leads naturally into our next stage, which I highly recommend that you do your whole career, and that is to go through comics and do gesture drawings constantly of figures that you think work really, really well on the page. If they're really dynamic or just have a lot of character in any way, whatever it is that appeals to you, you want to be able to.
And this exact tip is why I do like art studies, especially like for figure drawings for different artists, because there's always something new that you can learn from them. There's always something that you could just pick from an artist. Maybe it's the way the artist draws nose, it's the way the artist draws shapes that you could just pick and actually learn a lot from.
To create that in your own art. And so for my example here, I'm going to find a figure in this Daredevil book by Lee Weeks from 91, a long, long time ago. And let's just flip to something just kind of random. I want to find something relatively simple. And here we go. This is more of a simple figure. I don't want to stretch myself too much at this stage while we're really kind of learning and try and do figures that are really heavily bent over and require a lot of additional things. We want to keep this as simple for ourselves as we can starting out. And so I'm going to use this as my basis for a really simplified figure. And you can see already why I really wanted you to just focus on just copying simple gesture drawings instead of copying something like this, because it's very easy to get lost in some of the detail in the anatomy. I'm definitely going to end up with some variations in what I draw from the original reference, and that's totally okay for you too. You really don't need to worry about copying it accurately. That's not the point.
Let me look at the reference.
Why this muscle here is lower than this muscle, and then your ankles are really the opposite way. And this is all stuff that you'll have to learn as you go along, but we're not there yet. And so from here, I'm going to lighten this down to give myself a framework so I can start to put my anatomy on there.
Oh, yeah. I was about to go like and put the detail, which is actually my favorite part. Oh yeah, okay, you mean like a mini tutorial on the feet? Alright, okay, let me explain it. So usually when you're drawing the feet, one tip that I learned is that like we're going to have to approach it from a side view first of all, because that's the most simple angle to approach it from. So like a simple shape to use for the feet is that you have a wedge like this is a rectangle, and then you put you put this shape over here like this, and then you put one more shape like this, and then you have your feet. All right, so this area is going to represent like no, I didn't do that well. Actually, it's this shape. Give me a moment. Actually, it's this shape. It's a triangle, and then it's like this. It's a triangle. It's a wedge shape. This is a simple way to break down the feet. This is a side view. Now let's look at it from a different view. Let's take this for instance. Now you have a simple shape like this, and then you have a simple shape like this, and then you have another simple shape like this, and then you have another simple shape like this, which is a wedge shape. For the feet. And then you can then deconstruct this, of course, and then take this erase this, and then you can begin adding the the parts of the feet. So because of how you've broken this down, it makes it easier to sort of know where the feet is supposed to be. So we have our like what, five toes. So we could just use something like this and just indicate the areas where we're going to put the toes. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's actually too small. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and then we'll begin adding the toes. So we can go like this. Remember the perspective for the toes. Go like this, and this will be your first toe. Go like this for your second. Go like this for your third. For your fourth. And then for your fifth. So this is one example of how to break down the toes. So once you're done with this, you can then begin actually adding the details of the feet. So you could come here, erase these parts, and actually begin start adding details for the feet, like this. And you put that here like this, and here like this, and then here like this, and then you have the feet. Of course, the nails, the nails of the feet, and that is why understanding simple shapes is very important. And then you can break it down like this, and it's easier for you to break down any feet. I hope that was helpful. Yeah, but that's how I approach drawing the feet. The feet are not that complex. The most complex part is usually the hands.
Here, and I draw that as a ball, my elbow, and then I've got a few pieces coming out through here. It really doesn't need to be great. And so here's my deltoid on the other side. I've got my 3 muscles connecting in here. My head, let's just get that kind of redrawn in here. My neck is going to connect here. My chest is going to be just about there, just like this. And these muscles are going to striate down in through here from my shoulder, from my deltoid. Just about like that. Rib cage. I'm going to draw balls for my serratus and just connect it really simply. Again, I'm not worried about detail. I'm not worried about making it pretty. My stomach is going to connect down through here. Draw these just as simple balls. Again, just keep it really simple. I've got my pelvis here. Again, I'm not going to really be putting a lot into that. It's just going to be about like that. And now I've got my leg muscles, and I've already established this here, and you should have been drawing this quite a few times by now. So it should be fairly easy for you to just take your muscles and start connecting them through where they go. And again, you can see how quickly I'm doing this. It needs to be something that you can very, very quickly, because you'll be doing this countless times. And the better you are at doing this, eventually you'll get to the point where you really don't need to do this stage. You can kind of see the anatomy there and you can just start to draw it. But that takes years. And until you get to that point, you really want a way to be able to get your anatomy draped on a figure easily. And so there we go. I've got my figure drawn in. It's not incredibly pretty, but
Give me a moment. Let me catch up, man.
On it. And what you need to do is do a lot of these until you really start to get comfortable getting all of the basic anatomy working on a figure. So much more effective than trying to go through anatomy magazines or anatomy books and all of the little intricate detail that can bog you down for years. So that really covers the next step of our learning. In the next video, we're going to take everything that we've learned so far and start to develop it further by looking at other artists, anatomical studies, and some higher order concepts. And we'll break down exactly how to structure that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Actually, that was fun. That was really nice. I enjoyed that. That was fun. And we did it like under an hour. So that's good. So far, this is the drawings we've been able to do. And yeah, so what we learned was that, what did we learn today? We learned gesture drawing. We learned that like if you're starting out comic book, like doing a comic, you need to understand how to draw things gesturally first. Gesture drawings. And this is something I preach a lot. Like whenever people ask me like, what are the steps that you need to do to get better at art, like when you're starting out, I always come back to gesture drawings, and I always come back to shapes. I actually start with shapes and then gesture drawings, and then from gesture drawings you go down to actually what I would say is like once you've done gesture drawings, I'll say like you go to shapes. Yeah, so that's where you can talk about things like mannequin, using a mannequin and using like simple shapes to get things down. And then after that, you can then begin applying like shapes, like applying those shapes on the muscles. And that's where I'll actually advise or suggest. You can say shapes or structure. That's why I'll say like from there, you have to actually begin going into the anatomy proper. so that you can solidify your knowledge of that you've developed from gesture drawing and shapes, so that your anatomy, which is an art fundamental, can be stronger. Yeah, so I think that's basically the entire gist of it. I don't think he talks about anything else in the book. One day I'm going to like go through this book and like just look at all these drawings and probably copy a lot of them. Probably copy this entire book, to be fair. Copy this entire book and just have fun with it. Because that's actually how I learn. Like if I were to learn anatomy like this, whatever the hell he's talking about, because there's a part for perspective here as well. I would just draw every single thing in this book, all these figures, every single thing. I will look at there, they're talking about what I was just talking about, shapes, using shapes and structure to break down poses. That's what I was just talking about. Yeah, so I would draw every single thing in this book, every single thing, and that is how you get better. In my opinion, that's how I do it, because by actually practicing, I could learn a lot more than just like reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. That can guide you, but like drawing is actually being practical. Anyways, guys, I'm going to end this here and I'll continue later. Have a nice day. Thanks for joining.